Have you ever felt that eerie sensation of déjà vu, where a moment unfolds exactly as you remember it, even though it's happening for the first time? It's like your mind is whispering secrets from a life you haven't lived, pulling you into a shadow world where the familiar turns sinister. I've come across stories that take this feeling far beyond the ordinary tales, so disturbing they linger in your thoughts long after the telling. These are accounts shared with me by people who swear they're true, experiences that shattered their sense of reality. Let me take you through 4 of them, each more unsettling than the last, as if the veil between what is and what shouldn't be is thinning with every word. The first case comes from a woman named Elena, a librarian in a quiet Midwestern town. She reached out to me after hearing about my interest in the unexplained, her voice trembling over the phone as she recounted what happened. It started innocently enough, on a rainy afternoon in late autumn. Elena was shelving books in the history section, the kind of day where the library felt like a tomb, silent except for the patter of rain against the windows. As she reached for a dusty volume on World War II, a sharp jolt hit her like a memory crashing in uninvited. She saw herself in that exact spot, but the book in her hand was different, its cover stained with what looked like blood. The vision was so vivid, the metallic tang in the air, the distant scream echoing from the stacks. She blinked, and it was gone. Just the ordinary book in her grasp. Shaking it off as fatigue, she continued her work, but the unease clung to her like damp clothes. That night, as Elena locked up the library, the feeling returned with a vengeance. Walking to her car in the empty parking lot, she felt the ground shift under her feet. Suddenly, she was reliving a moment from her childhood, playing hide and seek in her grandmother's attic, the musty smell of old trunks filling her nostrils. But this wasn't a fond memory. It twisted into something nightmarish. In the déjà vu, she hid behind a curtain, heart pounding, but instead of her sibling finding her, a shadowy figure with elongated limbs reached out, its fingers cold as ice brushing her skin. She gasped, snapping back to the present, keys slipping from her hand. The parking lot was deserted, yet she swore she heard faint laughter, like a child's, fading into the rain. Elena drove home in a daze, convincing herself it was stress from long hours. But the episodes escalated. Days later, during a staff meeting, as her boss droned on about budget cuts, another wave hit. She saw the room as it was, but everyone around the table had vacant eyes, mouths moving without sound, and blood trickling from their ears. The horror was in the details, the way her colleague's tie knotted itself tighter, choking him slowly while he smiled obliviously. Elena's life began unraveling. She started avoiding mirrors, because every reflection brought a flash of déjà vu, seeing her face aged, wrinkled beyond recognition, whispering words she couldn't hear. Sleep became impossible, dreams bled into waking hours. One evening, while cooking dinner, she chopped vegetables and felt the knife slip in a memory that wasn't hers, plunging into flesh, warm blood spraying across the counter. She dropped the knife, staring at her unmarked hands, but the phantom pain lingered. Desperate, she researched déjà vu, learning it's often linked to temporal lobe glitches. But that didn't explain the violence in her visions. Then came the worst, a night alone in her apartment, reading by lamplight. The déjà vu enveloped her completely, transporting her to a hospital room she'd never visited. Tubes snaked into her arms, monitors beeping erratically. A doctor leaned in, face obscured by a mask, murmuring. It's happening again. She realized with terror that this was her future, or perhaps a past life bleeding through. Waking from the trance, she found scratches on her arms, as if she'd clawed at invisible restraints. Elena's story reached its peak when she confided in a friend, only for the friend to stare blankly and say, "You've told me this before." But Elena knew she hadn't. The déjà vu had looped, making her relive confessions that never happened. She quit her job, moved to a new city, but the sensations followed, each one more invasive, like an entity borrowing her mind to replay its traumas. Last I heard, she was seeking help from a neurologist, but her emails stopped abruptly. Sometimes I wonder if she's trapped in an eternal loop, experiencing the same horrors over and over, unable to escape. Moving on to the second case, this one from a man named Marcus, a construction worker in urban Seattle. He described it in a handwritten letter, his script shaky as if penned in haste. Marcus had always been pragmatic, dismissing superstitions until déjà vu turned his world into a labyrinth of dread. It began on a foggy morning at the job site, high atop a skyscraper skeleton. As he welded a beam, the familiar rush hit. He'd done this before, felt the sparks fly in the exact pattern. Heard the wind whistle through the girders just so. But in the vision, the beam gave way, plummeting him into the void below. He froze, tools clattering, coworkers shouting his name. The moment passed, but his heart raced as if he'd truly fallen. From there, the episodes multiplied like cracks in concrete. Driving home that evening, traffic crawling, déjà vu struck again. He saw his car veering off the road, smashing into a guardrail, flames licking the dashboard. The smell of burning rubber filled his nostrils, even as he sat safely in gridlock. He pulled over, sweating, questioning his sanity. Marcus tried to ignore it, burying himself in work, but the next day on site, as he hammered rivets, another flash coworkers laughing, then screaming as scaffolding collapsed, bodies twisting in freefall. He yelled a warning, but nothing happened. The structure held firm. His mates eyed him warily, whispering about burnout. That night, alone in his apartment, he poured a drink to steady his nerves. Midway through, déjà vu enveloped him, the glass shattering, shards embedding in his palm, blood pooling on the floor. He dropped it preemptively, watching it break exactly as foreseen. But his hand remained unscathed. The terror deepened when the visions started predicting minor events that then occurred. A spilled coffee at breakfast, a phone call from his estranged brother, harmless at first, but building paranoia. Marcus began journaling the déjà vu, noting patterns, realizing they centered on accidents, deaths narrowly avoided. One chilling afternoon, during lunch break, he felt it coming, a crane malfunctioning, cable snapping, load crushing him beneath tons of steel. He bolted from the site, ignoring shouts, and minutes later, the crane did groan alarmingly, though no one was hurt. Rumors spread he was labeled unstable. Isolation set in, friends drifting away. Then came the night he couldn't shake, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling fan. Déjà vu hit like a storm, the fan detaching, blades whirring toward him, slicing flesh. He rolled off the bed just as a bulb flickered, but nothing fell. Sleep evaded him, replaced by vigilance. Marcus's breaking point arrived during a family gathering he forced himself to attend. As he hugged his niece, the vision assaulted him, her small body limp, drowned in a pool that didn't exist in reality. He pushed her away roughly, babbling warnings, scaring everyone. Hospitalized for observation, doctors diagnosed temporal lobe epilepsy, prescribing meds that dulled the edges but didn't erase the fear. In his last correspondence, Marcus wrote of a recurring dream within the Déjà vu, a figure watching from the shadows, mimicking his movements, waiting to step into his life. He vanished shortly after, his apartment found empty, tools scattered as if mid-project. Authorities ruled it a runaway case, but I can't help thinking he's out there, forever one step ahead of disasters that feel all too real. The third case shifts to a younger perspective from a college student named Sarah in Boston. She shared her account via a series of voice messages, her tone hushed, as if afraid of being overheard. Sarah was the skeptical type, majoring in psychology, attributing Déjà vu to misfiring neurons. That changed during a late-night study session in the dorm library. Flipping through notes on cognitive biases, she felt the familiar tingle, this exact page, this dim light, but with a whisper in her ear, words she couldn't quite catch. The sensation passed, leaving her unsettled, chalking it up to exam stress. But the whispers returned, evolving into full auditory hallucinations within the Déjà vu. Walking to class the next day, backpack heavy, she relived a moment of crossing the quad, only this time. A voice murmured, "Turn back." She ignored it, but tripped over nothing, spraining her ankle. Coincidence, she thought, hobbling on. The episodes intensified during lectures. Sitting in psych class, professor droning about memory, Déjà vu struck the same words, but the room darkened, classmates' faces melting like wax, eyes pleading. The voice again. "They're not real." She bolted from the room, pulse thundering. Friends noticed her distraction, but she brushed it off, diving into research. Online forums spoke of Déjà vu entities, urban legends of beings that hijack memories to communicate or manipulate. Nights became ordeals. In her dorm room, as roommates slept, Sarah would jolt awake to Déjà vu dreams, reliving childhood birthdays, but cakes ablaze. Guests screaming as fire consumed the house. The voice grew clearer. "I've been here before." Panic set in, she avoided sleep, guzzling coffee. One evening, studying with a group, the vision hit collectively, or so it seemed. She saw the table as before, but friends frozen, mouths agape, a dark shape slithering between them. The voice hissed, "Join us." She screamed. Snapping back, her friends stared, claiming she'd zoned out. Doubt crept in. Was she losing her mind? Or was something invading it? Sarah's horror peaked during a solo walk in the park. Déjà vu enveloped her, paths looping endlessly, trees whispering names of the dead. The voice boomed. "This is your loop." She ran, but every turn brought familiarity, as if trapped in a maze of her own memories. Collapsing on a bench, she realized the visions were escalating, pulling her deeper into alternate realities where tragedies unfolded. Therapy helped somewhat, diagnosing dissociative episodes. But the voice persisted in quiet moments. In her final message, Sarah confessed fearing the entity was her future self. Warning of doom. She transferred schools, but updates ceased. I often ponder if she's still hearing those whispers, each one drawing her closer to an abyss. The fourth and final case is perhaps the most chilling, from an elderly man named Harold, a retired professor in rural England. He emailed me detailed accounts, his prose elegant yet laced with dread. Harold had studied philosophy, pondering reality's nature, until Déjà vu made him question everything. It began subtly, during a solitary walk in the woods near his cottage. Leaves crunching underfoot, he felt he'd trodden this path before, not in memory, but in a parallel existence. The trees seemed to lean in, branches forming symbols he half recognized. Dismissing it as age, he returned home, but the seed was planted. Episodes soon invaded daily routines. Brewing tea, he'd see the kettle boiling over, steam forming faces of lost loved ones, mouthing silent pleas. The déjà vu carried emotions, grief, rage not his own. Reading by the fire, another flash, the book pages turning to ash, words screaming off the page. He began documenting, theorizing it as glimpses into multiverses, where choices diverged horrifically. But theory turned to terror when the visions interacted. One afternoon, gardening, he relived digging the same hole, but unearthing a skeletal hand clutching a locket his late wife's. He dug frantically in reality, finding nothing. Yet dirt under his nails felt accusatory. Nights were worst. In bed, déjà vu would strike, reliving his wedding day. But the church empty, altar stained with blood, bride absent. A presence lingered, cold breath on his neck. Harold installed cameras, capturing himself muttering in sleep words like echoes and trapped. Friends urged medical help, but scans showed nothing. The climax came during a storm, power out, candles flickering. Déjà vu hit like lightning the room as is, but walls bleeding, floor cracking to reveal voids. A figure emerged himself, older, decayed, whispering, "We're all echoes." Harold fought the vision, smashing a mirror, shards cutting his hands. In the aftermath, he found a note in his own handwriting, "Stop looking." But he hadn't written it. Paranoia consumed him every day. Déjà vu felt like an invasion, a doppelganger stealing moments. In his last email, Harold revealed a theory, déjà vu, as portals for the dead to relive torments through the living. He planned isolation, but then silence. As I reflect on these cases, Elena's bloody visions, Marcus's fatal premonitions, Sarah's whispering entity, Harold's echoing self, a pattern emerges, chilling in its implication. What if déjà vu isn't a brain glitch, but a signal from fractured realities bleeding into ours? And the twist that haunts me, each storyteller mentioned a fleeting glimpse of me, the narrator, in their visions watching from afar, as if I'm part of the loop. Have I told you this before? The thought sends shivers, because in recounting these, I feel it too, the eerie sense that this conversation, this very moment, has happened exactly like this again.